I saw a really great, very excellent trend recently, and that is the Tumblr quotes that go hard. They're so good, they're so funny, and they're just really well written. Of course, I'm not being serious. They're often quite bad, but surprisingly, they're often taken quite seriously, or at least they take themselves quite seriously. There's a few themes you'll see repeated over these, but anyway, let's just get right into it.
Kinda funny when English teachers say stuff like, I can tell you didn't read the book, or I can tell when people BS their paper. No, you can't. You can tell when people are bad at BSing their paper. I didn't even read the Spark Notes and I barely skimmed the Wikipedia and you gave me an A. You kneel before my throne, unaware that it was born of lies.
You kneel before my throne, unaware that it was born of lies, is one of the greatest sentences I've ever read. I can't fucking believe it's on a post about bullshitting on assignments. This is like being passed around as like one of the greatest things ever written. It's like so deep and so meaningful, so well written. It's like, you know, A Tale of Two Cities. It's like classic literature, but it's not a good line. It's just nonsensical. Think about the sentence. What do you mean born of lies? My throne is born of lies. It's meant to be like a kind of simile, but the simile doesn't even make sense. Usually when these things are done in literature, it's actually meant to be meaningful in some way. It's drawing on some imagery or some tradition. How do you relate a birth and a throne? It's like it's trying to just pull any random, somewhat meaningful sounding terms that have like some history or some kind of medieval association or fantasy association, but it's just mashing together nonsense. And that's the kind of pattern you'll see with a lot of these super tough Tumblr quotes. Me holding a gun to a mushroom.
Tell me the name of God, you fungal piece of shit.
Can you feel your heart burning? Can you feel the struggle within? The fear within me is beyond anything your soul can make. You cannot kill me in a way that matters. Me cocking the gun, tears streaming down my face.
I'm not fucking scared of you.
What the fuck does this mean?
Decay exists as an extant form of life.
That's a terrifying answer. Have a nice day. So this is another one that they kind of select quotes out of. For one, a lot of this genre of post, they're trying to set up these specific deep sounding quotes, but they're actually without any kind of substance whatsoever. You know, usually meaningful quotes get passed down through history because they communicate a point. These are just trying to sound deep. They're mimicking, on the surface, the appearance of a deep quote. It's a lot like an AI. It's just mimicking the appearance of something. You cannot kill me in a way that matters. What does that mean? And you know, well, that brings up the point. It's trying to be ambiguous. It's trying to get you thinking about something. But thinking about what? Like I said, it's just trying to sound deep. It's not actually an essay. It's not actually putting forward an interesting or unique or original point. It's verbose as well, and it's just awkward. Like, how is it semantically different from you cannot kill me? Again, it sounds like it's trying to communicate something deep. It appears like it, but it's not. It's not communicating anything. Each line in this, each sentence is basically disconnected from the last. It's just quote mining, basically. Just quote after quote after quote of just some random nonsense, really. If someone does find this meaningful, I'd like you to actually explain, like, what is there of substance that each line is communicating? How do all these lines in this paragraph work together as like a cohesive piece? How does one logically follow the other? How does it communicate anything? It sounds a bit like Anakin's dialogue.
They're dead. Every single one of them.
You know, it's on that level. And I think it's actually quite comparable in a lot of ways because it's really just some random autistic people who are just trying to create something that has the appearance of being, you know, super cool. And then the follow-up line that the OP comes up with that is even more insipid. It's decay exists as an extant form of life. First of all, again, the verbosity, extant? Extant and existent, they have the same root word. Extant means more something still survives to today. And again, how does that word add to this sentence? It has no meaning in this sentence at all to say it's extant. And how does decay exist as a form of life? Again, it's something that's just meant to sound deep. It doesn't follow anything. Usually, when you have these historically significant quotes, it's following like basically a whole essay or a treatise, and then it's summarizing his thoughts at the end of it. This one in particular kind of draws on this Terence McKenna kind of, woo-woo spiritualist psychedelics culture and this kind of writing that you can kind of get away with playing fast and loose in terms of actually describing anything. Following this kind of writing tradition, you can become very adept at, writing complete nonsense and stuff that sounds deep and sounds like it's communicating something interesting or something valuable or some kind of truth at all. But I think for a lot of these, people are filling in the blanks. And that's not always bad. You can add ambiguity and fill in the blanks. That's like a common writing technique, but this is the most awkward way I've seen it done. And you see, I'm trying to describe the issue with it. I'm noticing a lot of the patterns, but at the end of the day, writing is subjective. So I can't really decry anything technically wrong per se, besides, malapropisms, misuse of terms, and making meaningless statements. But I can point out why I personally don't like it. Here's another one that was at the end of this Obama roleplay meme. I'll do anything for you, Mr. Obama. Please help. Anything? Anything for you, Obama. Then perish. And man, it's so hard. This line goes so hard. They're obsessed with this idea that you can have some stupid and silly premise and then extract something deep and meaningful out of that. Maybe it's a psychological effect where they look at their own lives and see how meaningless and frivolous they are, and thinking that through humor they can extract some deep, dark truth. It's an application perhaps of an absurdist philosophy. But I think it's a bit embarrassing. I guess it goes to show that philosophy is, as absurd as it claims to be. Maybe something wrong with me, but I feel like watching video Edward Cullen's so hot, but I am a boy and I'll be punished. How strange it is to be anything at all. Now you see this line, on its own, it's not actually that bad. It's kind of interesting and it communicates something. It doesn't communicate something incredibly unique or incredibly novel or incredibly deep. But it's an interesting statement and I don't necessarily disagree with it. This is another issue. They want to create this culture of these deep quotes. And a lot of them, like I said, they're farming for them. They're trying to find any example of these and big them up and try to create a legend about them. It's almost like a myth making around these random people being poets. They want to imagine there are just these poets anywhere, even in random shitty comments online, that there are these geniuses of literature out there. And of course, it's gay as well, so it appeals to Tumblr for that reason. They want to try to attach this kind of mythological status to a lot of their own political issues, which, that's not really a new discovery. Or I saw this video of this guy, he quotes a tweet by Drill, which is, "If the zoo bans me for hollering at the animals, I will face God and walk backwards into hell." It's not that fucking clever like all the others. And he says it sounds like something by Dante or something in the Bible. No, it doesn't. The people saying that have never read Dante or the Bible. It does not sound like them. It doesn't use the same verbiage. It doesn't use the same language. First of all, can these people even tell you a single quote from the Bible? Let alone from, anything by Dante? I think 9 out of 10 times probably no. And again, this line on its own, it isn't bad. It's all right. It's decent, but it's just hyping it up beyond what it is, They often farm quotes from TV shows as well. There's obviously the famous Spy Kids one. Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created? And that one, honestly, that one actually is funny. I think that one's actually a decent quote. So, not all of them are necessarily, as cringeworthy as these Tumblr ones. But I think things like this actually kind of started this whole tradition. They found the idea so amusing, taking these quotes from otherwise innocuous or childish comedy films and stuff and extracting something, interesting or deep sounding from it. And they've created a community around it. They've created a mythology around it. And most of the time they suck. Okay, these are iconic dialogue that sounds like they're from the great canon of literature, but are actually from memes. Great lines like, "There are no gods here. God's dead, and soon we will be too. This is hell's territory, and I'm beholden to no gods." So a lot of them have this kind of Reddit atheist bent as well. See, that's the issue with, sharing the internet with people, because they take this stuff that's basically on the same level as, in this moment, I'm euphoric. But they still, in 2025, act as though this is actually legitimately intelligent or interesting. Like, again, these are just not deep phrases. They communicate nothing. Half of these, first of all, they don't even make sense when you extract them from the context. Like, if it's a part of a story, maybe if it's a follow-up to some part of a story, it'd make a bit more sense. But on their own, they're not deep quotes. They're not interesting quotes. They're not well written. They're full of malapropisms. They constantly abuse the English language. Frankly, I think they're trying to kill the English language. They're trying to destroy it. God gave me depression because if my ambitions were unchecked, I would have bested him in hand-to-hand combat by age 16. I mean, again, that's just like, that is so fucking embarrassing, dude. Oh my goodness. I don't even have anything to say about that. That is just bad. That is just really bad. I want to offer some analysis on it, but it's just not good, dude. Because like, oh, my mental illness. I could have beat God, and no, you wouldn't have. Like, what are you even meant to say to something like that? It's just embarrassing. It's just cringeworthy. What about this meme? Again, another hard quote, mined from a meme. But in this case, it's not extracting the quote from the meme. The meme literally exists to be a delivery point for the so-called hard or raw Tumblr quote. In this case, it's wolfhood is a spectrum.
I am plagued by the carnal savageness of my existence. I know only to rip and tear and burn all that does not serve me. My teeth are knives which pierce the flesh of my enemies.
And then the epic doggo papa whoop. Oh, my teeth are knives. That's a great simile. How did he think of that one? That's a really, like, I wouldn't have thought about comparing teeth to knives. That's such a which pierce the flesh of my enemies. Well, what the fuck else would they pierce? I know only to rip and tear, and lifting a quote from a video game. And first of all, I mean, it was from a comic book for Doom. And that comic book, it was literally became a meme because it was so bad. It was so badly written. This like a parody of really bad writing, but it seems as though the creator, OP, and frankly, the people who are reposting this and seem to actually like it, they actually think this is deep. Like this is cool. This is a really cool and deep line, but it's just extremely edgy. And one thing you can tell with all of these, they really, really try hard. They're trying too hard to be deep, and they're trying too hard to use interesting or original vocabulary. But again, it just ends up being verbose. It just ends up full of malapropisms. It just looks like they flipped through a dictionary to find new words to throw in. Tear and burn all that does not serve me. See, and that would obviously be metaphorical burning, because obviously wolves don't burn, but how does that metaphor make sense? How does that at all apply to how wolves act? You know, they hunt in packs and they eat, but they're not destructive. They don't rampage. They don't destroy everything in their path. They're quite discreet. Like, so it's not even a good metaphor. And the worst thing, the carnal savageness. You just wanted to throw in carnal. It doesn't even make sense there. It has nothing to do, again, with this sentence. Whereas AI is far too verbose, it ends up sounding sterile. In this case, they end up sounding edgy and childish. And some of these are a lot just simpler. Like, there is not enough time to make all the things one's imagination can conjure. Like, yeah, you have limited time in your life. There's a lot more dreams you have than what you can possibly achieve. Like, that's, you know, a basic observation. And it's a universal observation, and it's not like you can't talk about that in art, but this isn't really talking about it in a novel way or any raw or hard way. So again, this is just hyping up what is, a reasonable quote, a decent one, to well beyond its genuine significance. And this one might be my favorite. Birdhood is a spectrum.
For the way I destroy is violent. I cannot be bound in a way that would matter.
In this one, it opens the sentence with "for the way," like as if it's following another line, as though it existed in a context, but it doesn't. It's literally just a quote written to exist on its own. It's just trying so hard to sound deep, and it's trying to sound like it belongs in some real literature. But it's not. This isn't part of a line. Because you could just say, "the way I destroy is violent." And also, that just doesn't mean anything either. Like, no fucking shit destruction is violent. What do you mean? I cannot be bound in a way that would matter. Again, just ripping off that fucking mushroom one. It communicates basically nothing. You could just say, "I cannot be bound." Yet another one. We love this. SpongeBob memes. You're starting to notice a pattern. They're all based on memes and all based on the most popular normie bait that exists out there, like SpongeBob memes. And what else? Oh, biblical references by people who've never read the Bible. What sin do you relish the most? Wrath. How righteous.
My fury is justified. My anger is pure. You wear vengeance like armor, but it corrodes from within. You'll become what you aimed to destroy.
Again, all the same patterns. It brings up this edgy version of Christian imagery, the kind that you see by people who use the term Catholic guilt. They seem to love that term on Tumblr. That last sentence, that could just be summed up by "you will become what you aim to destroy." And in this case, I would say what you seek to destroy, but that's just what my personal choice would be. I think that is less awkward, that fits better. I love the use of the term relish here. I just love relish so much. It's again just an awkward use of the term. It's hard to describe it beyond just calling it awkward. Like, what do I relish the most? Usually when we say relish, you're kind of creating an imagery of like a pig in a trough. Someone who's relishing the sunshine. You don't ask someone else if they relish sin. That's not how it's usually used. And of course, you don't have to use terms how they're usually used. You can be inventive. But in this case, it's just a very awkward and, in my opinion, embarrassing phrasing. So as you can see, a lot of this is about the subtle kind of phrasing that this Tumblr prose uses. A lot of them seem to be made by teenagers. They seem to be people who are, going through some teenage atheism phase. They're trying so hard to be deep and meaningful and introduce something new. And it's obvious that most of them were written by people who are way too obsessed with young adult fiction. But honestly, this stuff isn't new. Like, purple prose as a term has existed for a very long time. We've talked about florid language in literature for a very long time. This is all the same. This isn't some new thing. You read Dostoevsky novels and the way the characters act in that, they're like kind of edgy and self-important. There's always been, edgy kids, edgy teens around who always write in this overwrought way and try to make their language as expressive as possible and just way too florid. And one thing to consider is, how has this kind of writing affected the millennial writing trend that I'm famous for talking about? That is sadly my most famous contribution to culture, besides Safe Sleazy perhaps. I would say it has, because a lot of these people were brought up on, Tumblr. That's where, a lot of nerd types went, a lot of band kids and, literary people went, and these people ended up becoming writers. You'll see some of the commonalities, like the overwrought writing, just being embarrassing and awkward and cringeworthy as well. In the same ways, being far too verbose, although I feel like that's something I hit on a bit too regularly. I did that when I talked about AI as well. But for a lot of these cases, it's true. I think there's a lot of writing that's just too verbose, because I think it stems from people having a kind of overrated sense of self-importance. They think that they have some kind of sacred duty to occupy as much of people's time as possible because they have such a unique soul. They're a special snowflake who has to express themselves and the world has to listen to them. But you should listen to me instead, and you should support me on Patreon, subscribe. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed reading it. I think it was funny to cringe at a lot of these. But yeah, goodbye.
You cannot kill me in a way that matters.